Before we hop into today's conversation with one of the best coaches in the sport of running, I want to tell you a quick note that today's podcast is brought to you by Final Surge. And over the next couple of weeks, we will be documenting and chronicling some of the top coaches in the country across professional, collegiate, and high school sports teams. And we're calling this Final Surge Sessions because whether you're a coach, athlete, or entire team, Final Surge is the one platform built specifically for runners. It lets coaches easily deliver workouts, track results, and analyze progress, all in one clean dashboard. It syncs seamlessly with your GPS watch, Garmin, Coros, Apple Watch, Strava, you name it. No more juggling apps to stay organized. Final Surge brings training plans, messaging, and attendance tracking, super cool, into one simple place, perfect for any high school, college, or professional team. If you're a high school or college coach listening, head to finalsurge.com/schools for discounted pricing, up to 35% off. And then for anyone else listening to this, you can get 20% off your first coaching package with code Running Effect 20, all capital Running Effect 20 at checkout. Smarter training starts with smarter tools, and Final Surge is where that begins. I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with one of the top coaches in the country.
I think expectations have only grown, but you can't lose like the moments of like yelling and the screaming in the stadium, watching George, charge to victory, or watch Sage run 155. Like that's still the reason that I do it. And it's not for the money. It's not for the actual medals. It's for the moments when it happens. And so like that helps me like keep the expectation game at bay and not think about what I could have done different with other people. It's like you gotta enjoy being like the reward at the end like that. And it's really like you build this special relationship with the athletes over years, and so like getting that, like that makes it worth it.
You know him, you love him. That was Coach Dathan Ritzenhein today on the Running Effect podcast. This is a dream guest for me because Dathan was a remarkable athlete back in the day when I was growing up in the sport. He was one of the foremost American professional runners. He had a very successful long career across multiple distances with many companies across the country. And he's a stud. He was a stud as an athlete, and then he took it to the coaching ranks and helped to pioneer ON's OAC, where he's had remarkable success with people like Yared Nuguse winning an Olympic medal. And then even most recently in Tokyo, George Beamish winning the 3K men's steeple, Hellen Obiri winning world major marathons. You think about the amount of US titles he's had. I mean, I don't even know where to start listing all of his athletes and their accolades. But if you're a follower of the sport, you know the OAC and the success they've had, and Dathan is the man behind it. And I loved his honesty and vulnerability in this conversation, talking about the early years of the OAC, taking a bet on the company, taking a bet on himself to make the club and the group what it is today. We also talk about a lot of principles of coaching, of culture, of training, how to get athletes prepared and ready to win medals, quite frankly, make teams, do big things, do the biggest things the sport has ever seen. We also talk about how he manages expectation now that they are kind of the foremost training group in the world. And we also talk about his life as a husband and father, and specifically father to two absolute studs who are two of the fastest high schoolers in the country at this very moment. This is honestly one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done, not just with a coach, but in general. It's packed with wisdom. So if you guys enjoy it, please pass it on, as that is the biggest way in which we can create greater impact. And without further ado, enjoy this conversation with the legend himself, Coach Dathan Ritzenhein. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys have asked, we have delivered finally. Coach Dathan Ritzenhein on the podcast today. How you doing, Dathan?
I'm doing great, Dominic. Thanks for having me. It's my first podcast in a while, so we'll make it a good one.
Yeah. Packed with value. First question for you. Coming back from Tokyo, I was thinking of a question to get this one kicked off. And you wear many hats. You used to be an athlete yourself. So you ran all sorts of high-level races. Now as a coach with the OAC, you were just at the World Championships in Tokyo, had an athlete win a World Championships. And then you're also a father and your kids run. So I'm curious, as you think back to your career, as a professional athlete, standing on the start line, some of the biggest races, as a coach of some of the best athletes in the entire world, And then as a father, which scenario are you most nervous for before a race? Is it watching Addie's races, Jordy's races, or you as an athlete back in the day?
Well, gosh, it's been like over 5 years now since I raced, so I don't get nervous. I mean, I can't even remember what that feels like at this point. But I think I never got too nervous in the after my early years of racing. Like once I was through college anyway, like through college I would get nervous and stuff, and then after that, I mean, you'd have the normal nerves, but and honestly, like with the kids, I don't get nervous with Addie or Jude. My son is a good runner too now, and so uh, I don't know why. Like I think that they're young, they're going to go through stuff that I know is going to be hard, and I went through that stuff, and so. I don't get too nervous. I think I definitely get the most nervous still coaching that's the team and some people in particular, of course, George, like always, just when you're about to count him out, he's got to, he comes and rallies, so um, I think, yeah, the stakes feel higher sometimes, I guess, um, because I think, you can't really do anything when they're racing. You can do everything to prepare them. And, but after they step into the track, into the arena themselves, it's like nothing you can do matter. You can't say anything. It's really them, and so you just hope you prepared them as well as possible, and you know that they're just going to get it done. And so, yeah, definitely still coaching the team.
I definitely want to dive into a lot of the aspects of your current work with the OAC, but I think a part of your story and your journey that I haven't heard you speak on that I'd love to is that kind of parenting your kids, right? Because you were an excellent athlete yourself, and now you're one of the best coaches in the entire world. And I've had some fun conversations with one of your old coaches and mentors, Kevin Hansen, and he's told me some of the behind the scenes stories where like Addie had no interest in running for the longest time and then slowly trickled into it. So what's your perspective as the dad, kind of hands off, but seeing your kids slowly start to appreciate the sport that you love?
Yeah, that it's a surprise in some ways, at least with Addie. I think as a parent, you always think your kids, like you think the most, right, for them, um and but Addie didn't come off as overly competitive or anything like that. She did rec gymnastics, didn't compete. She did some swimming, but nothing crazy. And honestly, like the first when we moved back to Colorado when we started the team in 2020, it was COVID. We didn't have um, they didn't have any friends. They really didn't have anything to do with running too much at that point. They had been all over the world watching me, but they didn't run, and so um, it was expensive to rent the pool, for a swim. So we said, why don't you try the running thing here? It's outside, it's COVID times, and so she kind of started there. But honestly, like she just didn't seem to like. She was a good solid runner, but didn't seem to love it too much, and so. Like she'd stopped for a year. She played volleyball, but when she came back and started in high school, it was like pretty much, like right from the get-go, she was I think I actually was taking both kids to watch Ollie run in the Commonwealth Games. So this would have been like 2022, and that was her freshman year. And I knew I had going into her freshman year, I had asked her coach Kelly, how's she doing? Because I figured I'm gonna have to run with her. He said, "Oh, she's doing pretty good. She's gonna be on varsity." And I was like, "Wow, okay." They won like the national championships the year before, and I took her and my son to watch them in Birmingham, and I had to run when I was like, "Holy crap, she's like really good!" And she just took off from there, and started the year as the fifth runner and ended at like 18th at Nike Nationals that year. So, and then just continued to go from there. And then Jude, of course, has always been super intense, super. Yeah, we've had to hold him back a lot. Like he's got like super competitive. Really loved running. He knows everybody, like pro runners, and so for us with him, it was a different story. And now they're both really good runners. It's yeah, it's different from me in my journey to running when I was their age. I was just, like I trained like a crazy person, whereas they didn't really do that. And so
When Addie won NXN, what was your reaction during that race? I believe you were boots on the ground, watching as her dad How shocked were you, and what was that moment, shared moment of celebration like?
Well, we were pretty blown away. We never really talked about that. She had been 18th the year before, and she had run really well. She had gotten a lot better, but her coach also, like, it was all kind of like about winning the team title for them at Niwot, and so me and her mom, my wife Kaylin, were running around on the course, and we were watching it unfold, and I could tell through years of running myself that in the second half, I thought, well, she might win because she was moving really fast, even though the distance was far to make up, and she was maybe in fourth or fifth. But you could kind of just had to look, and you could tell. And as it was coming, and we saw her go up those last steps, like on the Glendiver golf course. Like me and my wife were both there, and we were just kind of blown away. And yeah, she was stunned, honestly, and it was a pretty cool moment. Yeah.
We were talking before we hit the record button about your years in Grand Rapids because I live in Ohio, not too far away from the state up north, as we call it in Columbus. And I'm just curious your perspective. I'm not saying that your kids wouldn't be excellent runners, but Boulder's the place to be. Niwot is the school to run for. I've had Coach Kelly on the podcast before. I've always been blown away by how he talks not just about developing as athletes, but also developing them as people and not giving them too much pressure. And this is a coach that has teams go to NXN every year. How, when you look back in hindsight, maybe grateful are you that, okay, we picked a really good city for our kids to develop in this sport, and Grand Rapids may have been a different experience.
Yeah, I was very blessed, and so both me and my wife ran for a really good high school team. We kind of had that same kind of thing that Niwot has now. But it's not that level now anymore. And so, but when we moved here, we had no intention of our kids running, here. We didn't know anything about like how good Niwot was, or anything. Like I hadn't been following high school running a whole lot. We just moved here for the town. It's like this amazing little Anytown, USA, quiet streets, really close community, and so we were very fortunate to get in here, and but it turns out that it ended up being amazing for both of them, and they get to be part of the same kind of experience that both me and my wife had, and Kelly has done an incredible job to create a culture on their team that it just continues to get kids out, and they have. I mean, we just came back from Desert Twilight, where it's shocking, like how deep the teams are. I mean, their girls, I think, had something like 12 or 13 girls under 1850, and the boys. I mean, they're probably. I think Jude was. Well, they had six guys under 1533, and they didn't even run one of their top guys. So their team, and they have so many athletes out all year long. There's kids from other schools that come on the off season and train with the club, and it's just got a really good inviting culture where everybody wants to come and be part of it, and it raises the level around them. And so I'm really just, yeah, we're so happy to have Kelly, and the administration is just like, man, they support running. And even like on our pro team, like we use their track, like all the pro runners in town, we use the Niwot facilities because they want to have that kind of culture and influence where the kids see the hard work, and I think it trickles down to the student athletes that they have too. And I mean, it takes a long time sometimes to build that kind of stuff, and so yeah, it's just been pretty cool to see how that's grown over the years.
For you and your wife, coming from an elite, background of running in those early years, was it hard not to, put them in races or see how they do, or push running down their throats? This is something I'm fascinated about when I talk to people who are out of the sport now, because Dathan, like, you've got incredible genes, right? So you would probably assume, okay, my kids could be really great if they wanted to, but I want to go about it the right way. Was it ever hard to resist the temptation early to put them in the sport?
I found it harder with Jude because he wanted to do it. Like he wanted to do more, and even now he wants to do more, but Kelly holds him back pretty significantly. Addie, it wasn't as hard because she didn't show. like she didn't even want to race, like she just wanted to go out for cross country her freshman year because she wanted the camaraderie of the friends that she knew. And that's we talked to Kelly on like the open house, when she was in eighth grade and said, she doesn't want to race. And he said, it's okay. We'll just keep training and pretty eventually she's just gonna want to. And sure enough, she did. So but you kind of have to let them come about it their own way and how you can't force anything down their throats. Otherwise, they're not gonna want to do it. And I mean, I believe that about everything. Even our athletes training wise, like people have to buy into and believe and want to do it. And in running, that intrinsic motivation is the driver for everything. And if you can't, like as a coach or a parent, you can't want it for them more than they will. Otherwise, it's just going to push them away from it, and they'll grow and find that kind of passion if it's there. And if it's not, it's okay. And so that's the track that me and my wife took with the kids. And I mean, it just goes to show they both are pretty competitive, and they have great genetics, but they have great coaching, and they have good guidance now. And so it's pretty cool to see them really embrace it.
What's dinner table conversation at the Ritzenhein household like? Is it talking about workouts and splits and what you did at work, or is it things completely unrelated to the sport?
It's a little bit of both, probably. We have like a set dinner time at 7 o'clock, and if you're home by the time practice is done, we're starting. Otherwise, you're on your own, but you can join us later. But we try to do that, and I think they're usually back, and we try to always have dinner as a family. All four of us, we sit there, and like the kids they'll tell us what they did at school and at practice, and then they're teenagers. They got homecoming and boyfriends and like stuff like that. Where like they talk about that stuff. We'll talk about college. We'll talk about what we do. Like as well. So the kids kind of get I think an idea of what mom and dad do all day long too. Because sometimes just like my wife is always just kind of taking care of the things that they need to have. And so I don't think they even realize sometimes the things that get done for for them. So we try to keep them like that, and we try to be as normal as possible. But then we also we know that they're competing at a high level now, and they're Addie's national champion twice now, and Jude is really rising fast. And so like Addie had a problem the other day with her ankle, and my wife would have to, when I was in Tokyo, she'd have to take her, and I have lots of good resources, and take her over, use the shockwave machine, whatever, like, so we have to do those kind of things too. But it's also the most normal, like family time we try to get as possible too.
People who have seen workout videos or races, they see you sprinting across the field, and people can deduct you're in decent shape still, and you keep up with it. How would you fare against the kids in a race, and at what point do you think you'll be beat?
Oh man. Well, I had this joke with I think it was with Kelly. I told him we we should have all raced in April this year because Addie was in really good shape. Jude was, like at that point where, eighth grade to ninth grade kids, and he starts training a little bit. And then I was in actually really good shape. And then now I'm probably on the bottom of the barrel, but I'm still I run a lot for a person who doesn't need to run for a job. But I try to run I average about 50 miles a week probably. And so I run, but sometimes I'll run twice a day. Sometimes I'll run 3 miles only. Sometimes I'll jump in with the girls. I can still, I bet if I had to pull out a 15 a low 15 5K I could, but Jude's run 15:04, and I'm sure you put Addie on the track and she could do pretty close to that. So it'd still be a hell of a race, but I think they're going to get me now.
Post Tokyo, kind of the off season for you, as much of a quote unquote off season as you'll get. I'm curious. I think a big thing for coaches is that reflective process after the season of what did we do right, what did we do wrong. For you, coaches out there listening, what are specific principles or practices you've implemented over the years after the season that you have found beneficial?
That's a very important time of the year because I think all coaches, you continue to grow and change and learn. And, um, we had like an amazing world championships, but there's also like misses that we had on the year. And what I always try to do, I have this time of year now where we only have like Joe and Helen really training for New York. We have a new runner, Ryan, who's training with us as well. He's doing Chicago, but the rest of the team is on break and vacation, and um, we don't meet as a team for a month. And so we have some voluntary type stuff, but I try to take a little time, like as well as much as I can. And so like today, I met those guys, and Dylan came, and that was and I met Mario the other day, stuff like that. But we don't have like normal, like in the gym, office hours, stuff like that until October. So I try to take that time, and I really look through everybody's training. And I like to think about the things that worked really well first, because it's always easy to go and look and say, this didn't work, or we should have changed this, or we changed this, and I want to go back. But really, like, looking at the things that worked, and then was it a trend from the year before or not? Because you had to stick to principles for sure, but you always have to change and try to get better. And sometimes those things fall flat. And if they do, then I have to try to figure out whether they were just implemented wrong. Were they still good ideas, or were they things that were just fundamentally didn't work out? And so I try to go back to all the things, like what are the tenets, the most important things. And really, it's mostly just about, if it's always about consistency, that's like the most important thing. Then like we take the things that we know worked over the years, and we can't like get rid of those just outright. We have to, if we're going to get better, we have to either improve those things, uh, like so something was maybe can be just implemented a little bit better, or maybe there's something that we're missing. And so like over the course of 5 years, for example, um, if I could say someone's been healthy that whole time, like I look at like Sage, for example. Sage is like a perfect example. Had an amazing world championships. It was a year where, running 155, made the world championships final, was fifth. But really, like, there wasn't crazy drastic differences in what Sage did this year. She was consistent all year long. I just went through this yesterday. She averaged 54 miles per week, and like that's good amount for an 800. It's probably more than anybody else in that field. Um, but it's probably similar to what she's done the other years. It's just she executed things better. She stayed healthy. And she's been someone who's been very good at like communicating. And so if you sometimes that's the simplest thing, is like what can you do better from the year to the next? Is can you communicate with the athlete better, or can they communicate with you better? And that's probably like the easiest way to build that trust. And if the athlete trusts and believes, you communicate well, and you have a sound training program, like then you just build from year to year. And so someone like her, this was just like, man, I think she could have done that kind of stuff, or she got just slightly better. Like I think it looked huge, like the improvement, but the reality is, I think those were in there. She just didn't have those opportunities. Some things went like in the other direction, and so then I can't look and say, well, let's just do the exact same thing again. But I can say, okay, a lot of things worked really good. So what could we do a little bit better? Well, luckily she's now in a position where we can actually plan some of those things, versus other years where we had to, take the opportunities that were there. And so I really look at that time from, yeah, that month that we have off, and I say, okay, like I kind of need to do a deep dive. I need to talk to the people I trust a lot, like Kelsey, uh, or Jason, our strength coach, PT. I have to really kind of take their input and decide then what are we going to alter, what are we going to change, and is it for everybody, or is it just for certain people?
One of my favorite quotes that goes off of what you were saying there is consistently good beats occasionally great. And I think what you said in regards to Sage there was excellent, where I think a lot of athletes don't realize how long of a game it can be to get to their goals, and that, doing the same thing, if it's a good program, over 4 or 5 years is actually how you get great. It's not 1 year of riding right up against the line and high risk, high reward, or high risk. Normally you get burnt out or you get injured. Could you speak to the athletes out there who want to be high performing, but maybe are a little impatient and don't realize that, hey, if you're in a good program, be consistent with it and the results will come over time, rather than rewriting the script every season because you didn't smash your, top goal?
Well, I think that that is exactly what most people's reaction is. Like, if something didn't go good, they want to change something. They want to change something. And the reality is, sometimes there's a circumstance, but you have to really look inward and say, did I do everything I could have done as well? Was I really focused? Was I really putting all the eggs in the basket that, like, because you get a short period of time in this sport, and the reality of the top end of the sport is that you do have to take some risks. I mean, what we do is the margins are so small, but that's what it takes as well. And so there's always a risk analysis in what we're doing. And sometimes you go over the line, and it does happen. Even for the best athletes, like, and sometimes it's to no fault of their own. Like, the athlete might have done everything right. Like, I can think of Alicia was running down the path a year and a half ago and wasn't doing a workout, wasn't doing anything, and just her meniscus root just blew up. Just tore right off the bone. Well, yeah, I mean, she had surgery on her ACL 6, 7 years before, but it's just like there's no that sucks, like, and you might, aside from not doing the sport, that's that risk is probably there. And I mean, Cinta's the same. Cinta had ACL surgery in 2019 or 2018, and it just failed this year. Like, it was just over time, and that happens. And those both those women had accidents that led to first surgeries, and so it's not like they did things wrong. They were in the gym, but you have to take those risks. And well, that's sometimes that happens, and it's kind of like what you do from there that matters. But I think any athlete that if you can generally just stack training over and over again, you're going to be pretty good. But there will be points in time where you have to take appropriate risks as well. And it's not always in training load. It could be in a race, like sometimes you got to take risks. And, um, like if you, what are they, fortune favors the bold and stuff. It's true. Like, I mean, no one who just played it safe always did things great. And so now there's a difference between being stupid and being bold too. And so finding that line is hard. And as a coach, I'd say most athletes are more likely to push and your job is usually to hold back, at least at this level. And I don't need to motivate these guys. Like, they're all motivated. Like, and if I have to motivate them, then they have to look inside and see what the problem is. But like on our team, they're like highly driven people who are they have goals and they're going to do whatever they need to do. And but it's not always easy. I mean, George Beamish, I'll just say, I mean, it's going to be hard for me to top that moment, mostly because of how, like, what he has gone through to get there, and like what it took to get him to that level is like it's I can't even tell people like how emotional that is. And George has told in the dark in the gym, like with injuries that have, I mean, so many that would have derailed almost every other person. And um, and he just continued on in a way um, that most athletes don't. And that's kind of the differentiator sometimes. I mean, people look at him and say, oh, he's so talented or whatever. Well, he until 4 or 5 years ago, he had never been able to run for more than 12 weeks in a row without injuries. And even since then, he's had injuries. But like the things that people don't want to do, like when they get in that George would still do them. And so like if you're going to take the risks, you have to know that that's there, that the potential's there, and if you're willing to put in the work, yeah, yeah, you can do that kind of stuff, but not many people can do it like, someone like George.
Two questions for you off of that. What in training, like how do you find what the line is for your athletes, right? Because inevitably you're going to find it. Do you only find it after they get injured and then you look back? How do you find the line? And then after that question, at what stage should athletes be asking themselves that question? Should they do it in high school, college, or should they wait until they're professionals and really trying to get the margins?
You have to stack foundation first. So everything, like even our first year people, we try not to find the line for sure. But sometimes someone has something that is, um, it leaves them, vulnerable. And I don't know, someone like Olivia this year, uh, she had a stress reaction in her tibia that, um, it's probably it was maybe long period of time of building foot strength and things like that that just needs to happen. Even though she's a NCAA champion and she's run really fast, like we just there was a limit maybe on what we could do there, and but then we'll have others where like a guy like Kai, I mean, Kai was fourth. He won bronze medal world indoors, and he was fourth at the world outdoors, just off the podium. I could have given him a lot more. Like he was capable to do more volume, to do bigger sessions, but even he wanted to do the 10K, and it's just like when you're young, it's your first year, like we got to leave some meat on the bone, and uh and he showed how good he is already. Like I mean, he's going to be a player, and so we have to look at it. We have to say we got to have somewhere to go, and so that's one of the principles that we try to do is we say, well, consistency is everything, and you have to have somewhere to go every year because I think of it like, if you have a 5-year pro career, that would actually be for most people, if it was a good 5-year career, that's long, honestly. But I had a 16-year pro career, and I did so many things wrong. I was a poster child for overtraining, underfueling, only doing it for for a year at a time, then getting injured, coming back, and I never looked at it like, okay, every season I gotta have. It doesn't mean more volume or whatever, but I think there's got to be somewhere to improve and go. Because if you're 23 years old, most of our athletes come out, they're 22 or 23. If you're already training the maximum amount you can, I just don't see mentally as well as physically how you're going to continue to do that for maybe like 8 years. Because I think these athletes should be able to go through 2 full Olympic cycles and say, I got better each one because the first Olympics, like maybe they're good enough, like Yard, where they can come out and he can win a medal in his first Olympics. But like it's there's a lot that's learned every championships, whether it's a world championships or Olympics, and it's not just about like how you manage, like the maximum amount of training you can do. Like that doesn't always, that's not the only thing. You want to be able to do that, but you also got to learn how to go through rounds. You got to learn how to peak, for these events. You got to learn how to manage the off seasons, and all that stuff is part of the program. And so if you are already doing on year one everything you could possibly do, I don't think you're making it 2 full Olympic cycles. So I think that's where we have to say, like let's have somewhere to go. And so if I'm talking to an athlete who's maybe going in high school or going to college, I would tell them the same thing. I was like, if you think you could be a really great athlete, you have to have somewhere to go every year. And there's definitely some, like I said before, risks that have to happen. If you want to run Division 1, you probably got to get to a certain level. And if you can, and that might mean more than if you were, say, like my son has runs 35 miles a week. Well, he's good enough. He probably can continue to be on the lower end and build his way up. But some kids might, if that might be the end of the road is running in college, then you might have to expedite that. But you still have to get better every year. You're growing, and so just because you're not going to be a pro doesn't mean you can skip those steps either.
For sure. Something I was curious to ask you about was how you personally manage your expectations as your teams continue to get more successful. You look at that original squad that was signed, and I was just reading through some of the names. I was like, I haven't heard a lot of these people in a while because a lot of them are retired from the sport and happy to be retired from the sport. And when you guys first launched, and I think I talked to Andy Weeding about this a while ago, but you guys were like blown away in the first year with how successful you guys were. You wanted to be that successful, but I think you all were pleasantly surprised. And then you look back to, last Olympics or this world championships, and it's like, it seems like from the outside at least, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the expectation is, look, we want to train athletes to win medals or minimally compete for medals, compete for wins. And that's what you guys are consistently doing. Yared medaling in the 15 last year, Jordy winning the whole thing in the 3K steeple this year. For you as a coach, how do you manage those expectations, those pressures, not just from the outside, but I'm sure you put it on yourself as the man in charge, as the man writing training?
Yeah, um, expectations are can can suck a lot of joy out sometimes, but they've grown over time, and I think a lot of people like one of the things I'm most proud of already with the team is that we didn't start like how we are now. I mean, it's only been 5 years, but I mean, we started with nothing really. We started with tiny budget. I mean, I paid to do this job for the first year and a half, pretty much. I lost money. I kind of because we didn't have that much, and it wasn't because of lack of support. I mean, we just were a small brand, and we had to provide a proof of concept. We had to really we started this out from nothing. We didn't have senior level athletes. We didn't have a golden check come down from a big company right from the get go. Like we didn't start this team just signing mega stars with huge contracts. Like these athletes all earned like the contracts they got the next time because they everybody came on a risk. I mean, I slept on the couch 90 nights the first year at training camps and races because we didn't have money to go places. Like we didn't have money to pay. Our strength and conditioning coach Jason, he did it for nothing pretty much because we were friends and he loved the sport. And now we are well funded. We have great results, but like every year we had to build that. Like it was like we had to really work hard to the point where it really was only the last 2 years where it seems like the results are there all the time, but like being the marquee, maybe big, most prolific team out there now, the eyes are bigger now on us, and so the 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 successes are expected and the failures are more visible probably, and that's why I think it can be hard sometimes because I think people expect you to be like the best or great all the time, and it's hard and not realistic. And so what I can look at and I can say is I'm so proud of the what we've been able to do, and like so our early athletes, we don't sign the other athletes without the success of like we don't sign Yard without Ollie running what he did beforehand. Uh I mean Joe was a guy that never won anything in college. And he went on and he made three teams in a row. He won US champs, beat Grant, Alicia broke American records, then and these are athletes. George just like what George just did is kind of like it's validation for all the things that those original people have done because Jordy was our last person that we signed in the initial group and for the lowest amount of money. And he came and he bet on us in a way like me as well. I moved my family here. I sold my house. I didn't have a mortgage. I could have lived in Grand Rapids, coached people, low stress job, but like I saw something here. I talked to the people at On. I wanted to make it happen, and we took the opportunity to do it, and we haven't stopped yet. And so while the expectations continue to grow, like was second at New York and Boston this year, and those felt like disappointments because she's won three in a row. But I mean, it's hard to win the Boston Marathon and New York City Marathon and second place, like yeah, that's amazing. But when they don't, like Yared had an amazing year. Honestly, like he did. He had a world record. He ran PRs across many events, but like not being in Tokyo, it felt like super hard and visible. But then when we know everybody else shows up and did this amazing performance in Tokyo, it helps to validate it. It just doesn't make those moments that you feel like you missed the mark any easier either. And so I think expectations have only grown, but you can't lose like the moments of like yelling and the screaming in the stadium, watching George, charge to victory, or watch Sage run 155. Like that's still the reason that I do it. And it's not for the money. It's not for the actual medals. It's for the moments when it happens. And so like that helps me like keep the expectation game at bay and not think about what I could have done different with other people. It's like you gotta enjoy being like the reward at the end like that. And it's really like you build this special relationship with the athletes over years. And so like getting that like that makes it worth it.
You mentioned, and I appreciate you being vulnerable, a lot of the early moments that set the groundwork, the foundation for what the OIC is today. When you think back to those 90 nights sleeping on a couch, when you're in Tokyo and you see, George winning a world championship title, do you ever think back to in that moment of celebration all the hard work, all the early days, what as an athlete used to be like those early miles, but for you, it was like those early days of maybe doubt and taking risk and yeah, moving your family and sleeping on couches, not getting great sleep, I'm sure. Doubts probably keeping you up at times. Do you ever think of those early days in the moments now of victory where you guys are an established team and those early days of sacrifices paved the way for the moments that you got to experience in Tokyo?
I think if you don't look back and appreciate what you've done, like the past, then you definitely won't enjoy the moment. And like, yeah, the life's a journey, right? And and it's really not like it doesn't mean anything if you just I don't know. We sign some athlete and they do it, whatever. Like they're a superstar, but if you develop the athlete, even Helen, honestly, like Helen had done so many things on the track, but like her previous sponsor didn't think that she could run the marathon. We took a risk there. Like everybody said, oh, that form, all that stuff. Well, like that wasn't easy right from the get-go. But like it took a lot of work to get Helen and her family over here and really into the marathon. And so it's like that's the kind of stuff that yeah, like yeah, you have to appreciate that stuff. And if you don't look back and say, man, where what we started with to what we do now, then yeah, you won't get the same joy out of it for sure. And it takes time to build, those relationships. Like I think, like going through hard moments builds a stronger bond, no doubt about it. Like George walking the steps up to see us in the stands afterwards, like that's the kind of moment you dream of, and I think you do when it's hard. I know they're thinking about it. Like I said before, like I don't need to motivate these guys. Like so for me, it's like I love to see them do it, knowing that like what they've been through, and that's like that's still the most important thing is to be able to look back and see like where did you come from and what did you go through to get to the moments that are like these big incredible achievements that they do.
Did you always know you were going to get here? Like, if I would have talked to you on day 10 of sleeping on the couch, like, did you think that these things would happen? Did you think that they would come 10 years down the road, farther than they've happened? Like, what was your perspective early on? Was it like a true gamble where you had no clue? Or did you deep down feel the confidence that it could be everything that it has become?
Well, I think it happened a lot faster than I thought it would. To accomplish what they have in this 5 years, I never had many doubts that we could do it. But you still have to do it. And I don't know, we did it in a period of a very short, yeah, period of time, 5 years where, I mean, within 2 years, we were getting really good results internationally. And by through the third year, um, yeah, like, I mean, we were really, really good. We had, and in Budapest, we had three fifth place finishes and a sixth place finish, like, but still, we hadn't won the global like major title. I mean, Ollie had won, the Commonwealth Games, and Mario had had Euro title, but like we hadn't had the major medals and things like that. And but then the next 2 years, it comes every year. And if you look, you can say you build just like we want to do in training to get stronger. The results build every year, and this past year we had a first, a fourth, two fifths, a sixth. Like a lot of people rate on the edge of those medals again, and so, but they build off of everybody else's success. And so the ones that weren't there, like I know Dylan ran most of the year with Kai. Like he's got it. He will be motivated and know and get that kind of confidence from it. And I think that's the kind of stuff where you have to, like, if you have a strong team, uh they help build the confidence of every other person. And you take some ownership in what they do, because we meet 6 days a week. Like we are very in um we're invested in each other's uh lives, really. Like these guys are friends. They spend the time away from practice together. And so I think that's probably, if you have that strong culture in the on team, it's yeah, that's really what it takes. And so, yeah.
Something I'm curious to get your insight on, as you have built, the OAC into the kind of premier club, not just in the US, but it feels like the world. As a fan of the sport and someone who grew up in the sport, when I was growing up, it was really just Bowerman, maybe a little bit of the Oregon project, and then maybe a few things here and there, but it was basically Bowerman. And then over the past 5 years, it almost feels like the shifts we've seen in college football with like NIL and all of that, where the sport just feels like an entirely new sport, where it's like a new group pops up every single year and brands are making these decisions where like there is no longer Bowerman, there's all these Nike. I don't understand it personally. And with that, I think as a fan, it's easy to look at the OAC and be like, okay, this is very straightforward, this is On's group, and they kick ass anytime they race on the national or global stage. For you, what's kind of your perspective from the 30,000 foot view, as also a fan of the sport, of what groups have become in the country? And also, how cool is it to kind of be leading and growing what 5 years ago felt like the smallest one on the map and has quickly turned into the one that people look to?
I mean, I love it, actually. I love that feeling of having um established this team to that level. But I also, honestly, I love the challenge, like, of it. I mean, this is a small world. And so the other coaches, like Nike Swoosh Track Club, you know what? These guys are like colleagues, actually. You see these people the same places all over the world. Pete Julian is up at Niwot High School. I see him everywhere. I see Diljit at every meet. And like, yeah, over the course of time, there's been some that come and go, but I see Kevin Hansen still, like, and that's 25 years later, they're still going. But if you have something to cheer for, I think it's important and it's good. And so, like, I want people to think of OAC as the team that they want to cheer for them. And but it's okay to have rivals, and I think that pushes us. If we were on the top and there was no other people out there um, that didn't want to compete at that level, then I mean, God, it'd be like we're doing time trials, it would feel like. But it's not just about like George versus El Bakali. I mean, we really want to create a team that people want to cheer for. And I think that we are different, from everybody else. And we've had great support and marketing from On. We've opened other clubs, and we take that same model to those other clubs. And other brands are trying to do the same now. They're trying to, and I love that they're following the mold of what I think we are doing. But in reality, like when we started, yeah, I definitely thought about those other clubs as I want to beat them. Like I'm a competitive person and I want to see us on top. And so now we are higher up on the food chain, but that just motivates me just as much to be able to keep us here. But I respect greatly those people who are our competitors because it is like a lot of people might not know this about pro running, but it's like a traveling circus. You know, like we see the same coaches and the same agents and the same athletes all all over the world. It's like an office that moves. And so like you have to be like if you have to be friends with these people, you have to actually cheer for those people. Like when someone does something great, if Ed Eyestone's guys win a medal, I'm sending him a message. You know, like Mike Smith is sending me messages if George wins. Like that's you have if you don't embrace the closeness, the tightness of this sport, then you're going to find yourself on an island real fast. And so you have to respect your competitors a lot and know that they're going to push you to be your best. And that's why we can't take our foot off the gas. We just keep going. And that drives us, makes us better and makes them better too.
Through this podcast, I've developed a great friendship with Coach Chris Miltenberg at UNC, and in our conversations, he talks about the good old days of rooming with Mike Smith and Bonzi was on those teams early on, and they've kind of all of Henner's guys have kind of established a connection that they all call each other if they have a question about training or workouts or whatever it might be. For you, does that exist much in the professional world where coaches are bouncing off each other? Is it a little more cutthroat and competitive? And if you have a question, who are some of the mentors that you lean on and rely on?
I definitely think there's probably less of that I mean, and there's fewer of us too, right? I mean, how many real professional coaches are there? I mean, not tons, but at the same time, there is definitely, you have to be able to try to maybe not work with each other, but like, I mean, you got to know when other people are racing. You got to like Diligito will ask me about when our people are racing because she also is trying to put together things for her people. You know, like that's like you have to have this kind of this courtesy amongst your colleagues, and so probably less training related and more like how you doing kind of stuff. I mean, it's not uncommon for like if we had something rough, people will check in on you. Just like they're not just going to congratulate you, but they're going to check in and see, hey, you doing all right? You know, because it is a very hard job as well. There's a lot of long hours, um, and I think that you can definitely respect the work that your colleagues put in, even if they're competitors. And so, I think that that's something that maybe you don't get that in other sports, and maybe you get more of it like across, you know, like down to the college ranks, maybe or something like that. But yeah, I think it's a small world, and so you kind of you gotta have some friends out there too because it's very hard otherwise. And so I think if you don't have friends, it gets lonely real quick at the top.
Recruiting culture. How do you guys recruit people? What are the key characteristics you look for outside of the times? Because anyone you're recruiting is going to have the times, the qualifications. But what are some of the X factors you look for? And then in terms of culture, right? That comparison to college. The professional world is set up a little bit different. People aren't staying in dorm rooms. It's not, 7 on the grass. How are you trying to form a solid culture that defines the OAC as a professional group?
Wait, what was the first part of the question again?
Recruiting. What are the
Oh
key
yeah.
characteristics that you guys are looking for?
So when we're recruiting people, it starts pretty early. I think a lot of people might not realize just how long it starts, and now it starts even earlier. With NILs, it's like, I mean, you're talking about years sometimes, and um, but there's a finite amount of budget always, and there's a finite amount of time, and so every athlete that I add to the team, I either gotta take that time out of somewhere else, or I need to like get more staff, which I'm lucky. We have a very robust staff, and so I've been able to continue to recruit athletes because Kelsey joined the coaching staff 2 years ago. We have Laura Thweet now, helps me with the marathon people. And we have a full-time physio. We have Jason, our strength coach, who's been here since the beginning. Andy Weeding's our brand person that sits in the office every day. We have an operations person. So we have like a robust staff, and that allows us to recruit more athletes and have a bigger team than when it was just me doing everything until for the first 3 years. Like, and that was going to be unsustainable. But needed to put the work in early, but I've continued to be supported in being able to grow those. So now when we recruit people, I know that I trust Kelsey very much. If I say, I still maybe I write the training, but I might say, hey, I need you to put in a 6K VO2 work for Mario. Can you do that? And she'll do that, and I'll trust what she'll do, or I'll give her the speed days and say, please work on their technique, their development. Same thing with Jason in the gym. Say this person's needs to continue to improve here. Koki, our physio, like I know that they're going to be like the problems right away will be addressed, and so I could leave to Tokyo for 3 weeks because I knew Laura would be here for the others. And so doing that allows us to continue to have a big team, but there still is a limit. And so when we recruit athletes, I try to find where we have holes, I think, in the team. And I say, okay, um, we don't have someone American in this event discipline. And so who do we have out there? We start to recruit that person. We see if they're a right fit for our team, because honestly, this is not maybe it's not the right setup for everybody. Like we've recruited athletes that we don't get for sure, and they found something that they thought they wanted elsewhere. And I think that we still think we have the best setup, but we have to have them buy in 100%. And so we have recruiting trips. We bring them out. We have them meet people. We get a lot of time to talk to them about specifically their like how we see their progression going, and then we court them for a long time, and then we have to work with the agents to try to get the deal done if they want to be here and we want them to be here. And so we recruit them, and yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes more than a year. So it's quite interesting.
Are there any coaches or people in different disciplines, not in the sport of running, football, soccer, baseball, I don't know, whatever it might be that you look up to and you try to study and emulate?
Um, well, honestly, like I do try to talk to like if you have an older coach, man, try to pick their brain. I'm still fairly young. I'm 42. I think I'm really good at some things. I see the big picture pretty well. I think I'm good at like finding talent. I think I'm pretty smart at training, but man, a guy who's been in the game for 40 years is going to have some kind of knowledge that you can take as a coach. And so, like if I could sit down and talk to them, like I get the chance to, I do. Like Ron Warhorse, every time I'm with him, he's going to tell me some crazy story about Vietnam, or, but there'll be some nugget of gold in there that they'll mention that you're like, okay, yeah, that guy like did amazing with milers for, like for so long. Like what can I take from that? And so, I think, yeah, if you're not willing to learn something and talk to those people, then yeah, you're not, you'll become obsolete too. And so, I think that's probably, yeah, that I don't have a person who I looked up to as a mentor, but I do have people that I trust a whole lot. And if I could, like Kevin, for example, honestly, is someone who uh, Kevin Hansen, that anytime he's one person that I could call anytime. And usually I see him and I just want to hear what's going on with him, because I think that what he built there over like Kevin put his own money in, him and his brother Keith. They put their own money in over the years, and they're I don't know. I guess their pro team's been 25 years, but even before that, like forever. And it doesn't have to be, honestly, the person doesn't have to be like the best coach in the world, like or have um, the highest level. I mean, you'd be a high school coach for 30 years, and you're going to know about building culture, and sometimes more than people who work with higher talent. And so, if you can learn from those people, that's the best thing you can do. And I think when like when I was looking into getting into coaching, really, this was, I guess, well, my first coaching real coaching job was I was a volunteer assistant in 2013 or 2014 for Andy Powell at University of Oregon, and uh, he was just he was the first person that I would say kind of like had an influence into what I would do later on. And he told me that the best thing you can do is get a volunteer coaching job at a really good school. And so, like, anytime I talk to someone who is trying to get into coaching, I tell them the same thing. I was like, you have to learn, you have to start somewhere. And so I think, like, for me, my experience was this was my first full-time coaching job, but kind of coached part-time for about 6 years before that, and just slowly built over time. And there's not a shortcut to learning, and even now it's the same way. I mean, been to many world champs and Olympics as an athlete, but you have to learn how to do it as a coach too. And I think if you're willing to learn, yeah, you'll always improve.
Final Surge is helping to bring together this series, talking to some of the top coaches in the world. You yourself, from my understanding, use Final Surge, the company. Can you speak to how you use it with your team, the benefits you've seen, and yeah, how it's elevated what you do on a coaching level?
Yeah, it's been great. Tim from Final Surge, gosh, I got years of training on there now because he let me use it early on for free, like when I was an athlete, and then starting coaching, like this was probably 2015 or 16, something like that. I started using it as a source for myself. And then for the athletes, I coached a group of sub-elite athletes, and then slowly build over time to where I coached some better professional runners. And, it's been kind of a solid foundation for me to be able to build out training. Always go back now and look and see, I can compare training from before, and it's easy for me to be able to keep an eye on my athletes as long as they link up their watches. Like Dylan Jacobs is chronically not connected somehow, but I really I really think, I see them like almost every day, 6 days a week through a lot of the year. But if you're a coach who can't see your athletes that much, it's a very useful tool, and it's very user friendly. It's very easy for me to see trends. And so, yeah, it's something that's been, yeah, it's been a decade now of me using.
I'll have to get you back on. So many more questions I want to ask you, but final serious one, wrapping up our time together. For a competitive athlete listening who wants to be great at the sport of running, what parting words do you want to leave with that individual?
I think for if you want to be great in the sport, it's going to take time, and you are going to have to build off of foundations of consistency and progression. And if you can do those things, there's not shortcuts, at least not ones you can look at yourself in the mirror every day. So you have to just put in the work over and over and over again. And a lot of times that is boring work. It's stuff that isn't fancy. It's not great track workouts. It's just good stuff done over and over and over again. And if you can do that with that enthusiasm, that continued desire, then you're gonna find success, and it's gonna make the moments more meaningful. So just because it doesn't come right away doesn't mean that it's not gonna happen. You just got to really stick in it. You got to really stay with it, and you really got to believe in what you're doing. And if you have a coach or a training partner or someone who you trust to guide you along the way, it's very helpful. But you really have to believe in what you're doing and not just think that you know everything. I think you have to continue to look and try to be better and try to be open to new things, but also believe very much in what you are doing when you're doing it. And if you do that, take your time, it will happen.
Excellent wisdom. Final question for you, Dathan. The question I ask every guest on every single podcast. I have no clue how I landed on this question years ago, but it's stuck around. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you personally choose to make for him?
I'd probably keep it really simple because you can't screw up simple. So yeah, maybe pasta.
I love it. Simple, easy. easy to execute. Dathan, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and all the wisdom and inspiration. And also, just as a fan of the sport, you make the sport a lot more interesting to watch when you've developed a lot of Americans who are now world class, which is fun as an American. So appreciate all your work. We'll have to run it back soon on the podcast, and hope you get some rest time.
Awesome. Thanks, Dominic.